A flea market dealer opens a shoebox and finds a palm-sized glass ambrotype. A bearded man, eyes closed, dark cloth wrapped around his skull, head resting on a striped pillow. The facial lines, the distinctive mole on the right cheek, the beard, trimmed short in wartime fashion. Everything screams Abraham Lincoln. Yet no scholar, museum, or archive records such an image, and the chemical process used to make it had largely disappeared from professional studios by 1865. If authentic, the plate would be the only close-range photograph of Lincoln after he was shot. If forged, it is a sophisticated counterfeit designed to fool experts and spike auction prices. Tonight, we trace the photograph's plausibility back to the last night of the Civil War president's life and set the criteria by which any deathbed image must stand or fall. Here is what the public record confirms. At 10:15 p.m. on April 14, 1865, John Wilkes Booth fired a .44 caliber Derringer into the back of Lincoln's head at Ford's Theater. Major Henry Rathbone, blurting, "He has shot the president," tried to seize Booth as the assassin vaulted from the presidential box, slashing Rathbone's arm with a knife before escaping across the stage and into the night. Soldiers and surgeons rushed to the box, diagnosed a mortal head wound, and carried the unconscious president across 10th Street to the Peterson boarding house. They laid him diagonally on a too-short rope bed in a rear chamber measuring roughly 15 by 9 feet. From that moment until 7:22 a.m. on April 15th, a constant stream of people packed the tiny room. Surgeon General Joseph Barnes probing the fractured skull. Secretary of War Edwin Stanton dictating orders and interrogating. Witnesses. Cabinet members, senators, and assorted officers filing in to glimpse the dying president. Gas lamps hissed. Morphine mitigated spasms. Church bells tolled through the night. Mrs. Lincoln entered periodically, but collapsed whenever she saw the blood-soaked pillowcase. At dawn, the death rattle began. Lieutenant Colonel Charles Crane counted the irregular breaths. Dr. Charles Leal pronounced the end. Stanton's famously clipped eulogy, "Now he belongs to the ages," followed immediately. Within minutes, Stanton issued an uncompromising order. No one was to sketch or photograph the corpse. Guards enforced the ban through the autopsy, the White House lying in state, and the funeral train's 12-day journey to Springfield. The only image known to evade confiscation was a blurry long-distance negative exposed in New York's City Hall rotunda and quickly suppressed. Consequently, historians have relied on textual accounts to reconstruct Lincoln's last hours. No uncontested visual record exists of his face after 10:15 p.m. That absence makes the flea market ambrotype explosive. A genuine deathbed photograph would override every sentimental 1865 memorial print, anchor biographies with primary evidence, and settle debates about the exact position of Lincoln's head wound. Forensic anthropologists could map tissue swelling. Historians could compare the pillow's stripe pattern to Peterson House artifacts. Curators could date blood oxidation on the cloth. Conversely, a proven fake would highlight how advances in digital scanning, period chemical replication, and facial morphing now threaten the integrity of photographic archives. To evaluate the plate, any investigation must clear 4 hurdles. First, technological consistency. Does the ambrotype's emulsion, substrate thickness, and collodion residue match materials in use during the Civil War's final months? Second, provenance. Can each ownership transfer be documented from 1865 forward, or are there decades-long gaps ideal for substitution? Third, anatomical alignment. Do cranial landmarks, ear shape, and beard growth correspond to Lincoln's verified February 1865 studio portraits? Fourth, contextual feasibility. Could a camera, tripod, and 8-second exposure fit amid the crush of officers in the Peterson bedroom without Stanton noticing? Forensic deep dive. How we put the plate on trial. We begin with a simple side-by-side. On the left is the mysterious glass photo, lit from the side so every scratch and bubble shows. On the right is the last undisputed portrait of Abraham Lincoln, taken in a Washington studio 2 months before the assassination. A computer program marks key points on both faces: the corner of each eye, the tip of the nose, the edges of the ears, the mole on Lincoln's right cheek, then measures the distance between them. Most of those measurements match almost perfectly. Two don't. The right ear sits a bit higher in the new image, and the beard line is trimmed shorter. Supporters say the shift could be the result of swelling from the gunshot wound and a hurried shave by doctors. Critics counter that it may signal the head was copied from one image and pasted onto another body. Next, conservators test the glass itself. They shine different kinds of light, infrared, ultraviolet, and plain white, across the surface. Infrared, the photo shows faint scratch lines that early photographers often used to guide retouching. That's a good sign of age. Ultraviolet light makes tiny cracks in the film layer glow. Their pattern resembles cracks in other Civil War-era photos that have spent 150 years in damp attics. Chemical swabs detect silver, iodine, and bromine, the classic recipe for 1860s photography. Nothing modern, no plastic coatings or digital inks, turns up. One puzzle remains. The clear varnish that seals the plate contains a red dye first sold in 1868, 3 years after Lincoln's death. Preservation experts note that owners frequently revarnished old photographs to keep them from fading. Skeptics see the newer dye as evidence of later tampering. The background details are checked next. The striped pillow under the subject's head matches down to the millimeter pillowcase that still lies on display at the Peterson House Museum. A crease in the bedsheet lines up with sketches drawn in 1865 by surgeon Charles Leal, who treated Lincoln that night. Yet in the photo, the sheet looks neatly tucked, whereas eyewitnesses described fabric bunched and bloody, a possible sign that someone restaged the scene later. After the lab work comes the paper chase, the provenance timeline. The current owner bought the plate in 2019 for $85 at a garage sale in Springfield. The seller said it came from a relative's estate, emptied in 1992. Probate records from that estate list one glass Civil War photo, but give no image or description. A family diary mentions a trunk shipped from Washington to Ohio in 1910 by a nephew of Julius Ulke, one of the two photographer brothers who lived in the Peterson house. That link is tantalizing, but from 1910 to 1992 the trail goes cold. 82 undocumented years leave plenty of room for a forgery to appear or for the real plate to be misplaced and rediscovered. To make sense of the mixed evidence, we ask 4 specialists for quick verdicts. Caroline Gray, a historian of early photography, points to the period chemicals and retouch marks. If this is a fake, someone faked it before 1900, and that would be almost as remarkable. Facial recognition researcher Dr. Lorenzo Diaz highlights the ear mismatch. In my model, that single feature pushes the probability of manipulation above 60%. Museum curator Marcus Hill focuses on the varnish dye. Any object needing a post-1868 touch-up already misses the moment it claims to capture. Polymer chemist Evelyn Saab disagrees. People routinely resealed plates in the 1870s. The varnish tells us about preservation, not about authenticity. So, where does that leave us? The photo's facial proportions, glass chemistry, and period backdrop argue for an 1860s origin. The newer varnish, the ear anomaly, and the 80-year gap in ownership argue against. In the final act, we will weigh these points, apply the standard historians use when evidence collides, and decide whether this glass plate truly froze Lincoln's last moments, or whether it is history's most convincing counterfeit. Verdict and impact, weighing the evidence and what it means. The plate has now endured every test we could throw at it: facial comparison, light spectrum imaging, chemical sampling, and a hard audit of its paper trail. To reach a judgment, we apply the same threshold museums use before elevating any late-breaking artifact to primary source status. An object must show an unbroken chain of custody and no material features that contradict the event it claims to depict. Anything short of that becomes at best attributed to, and at worst inauthentic. Step 1. Provenance. The chain begins well enough, an Ulke family trunk in 1910, but vanishes until the photo resurfaces in 1992 probate files, then again in a 2019 garage sale purchase. 82 undocumented years form a lethal gap. In those decades, the plate could have been lost, altered, substituted, or newly manufactured. Without receipts, letters, or exhibition records, no archivist will certify the object's passage from 1910 to the present. Verdict: fails provenance hurdle. Step 2. Physical medium. Spectral and chemical tests confirm 19th century silver iodide chemistry and age-consistent crack patterns. Those points favor authenticity. Yet the shellac varnish contains an aniline dye first produced in 1868. Revarnishing is common, but once a post-event coating is admitted, the discussion moves from original state to altered state. That alone does not disqualify the plate, but it shifts the burden of proof. The owner must show that only the varnish changed, not the image beneath. No records exist of the revarnish date or circumstances. Verdict: inconclusive, tilts against. Certainty. Step 3. Facial geometry. 30 of 32 facial reference points match Lincoln's known proportions within a 3 mm tolerance. 2 do not. Proponents attribute the ear shift to swelling and the beard change to hurried medical trimming. Opponents note that ear height remains stable even under trauma, and that the beard's straight cut aligns better with studio grooming than with battlefield surgery. Alone, these discrepancies might be forgivable. Alongside the provenance gap, they compound. Doubt. Verdict: adds to cumulative suspicion. Step 4. Scene consistency. The pillow ticking duplicates the museum artifact. The bedsheet crease aligns with surgeon sketches. Yet eyewitnesses described wrinkled, blood-soaked linens, not the tidy bedding, in the photo. If someone restaged the room after the burial, the background match loses force. Verdict: context does not rescue the object. Overall ruling: given the broken paper trail, unexplained varnish, facial anomalies, and scene setup conflicts, the plate fails the standard for a contemporaneous deathbed photograph. The fairest label is period image of uncertain subject, which places it outside the canon of authenticated Lincoln photographs. It remains a curiosity, perhaps an 1870s homage created from a studio negative and staged props, perhaps an earnest but misguided reconstruction, but not the historical smoking gun many hoped. But this mystery tour isn't over. There's another rabbit hole waiting. Check out the follow-up video packed with even stranger Lincoln photographs, a clip that's already clocked 4 million plus views and sparked over 4,000 comments. Click the link below and decide for yourself what's real, what's rumor, and what's pure illusion.